I was adopted at one. Why did my birth parents abandon me? It was one of those quiet Sunday mornings in Columbus, Ohio, when everything seems normal on the surface, but something is about to crack wide open underneath. My name is Ethan Walker. I'm 21 years old, just finishing up my second year of college studying business management. My life until that morning felt pretty straightforward. I have loving parents, a decent group of friends, a girlfriend named Sarah, and a dog named Max. Nothing extraordinary, nothing out of place. But all of that changed the moment my Grandpa Joe asked me to sit down in the kitchen and said those words I never expected to hear. "You're not who you think you are, Ethan." I laughed nervously at first. "Come on, Grandpa, what do you mean?" He didn't laugh back. He just looked at me with sad eyes, the kind of eyes that make you realize this isn't a joke. That there's something heavy inside him that's been bottled up for decades. "You were adopted. When you were 1 year old, it felt like the floor disappeared beneath me. I couldn't breathe. My mind immediately flashed back to my childhood. My parents' hugs, birthday parties, the way my dad used to teach me to ride a bike. Was it all a lie? Or maybe not a lie, but just half of the story? I remember feeling a storm of emotions all at once. Anger, confusion, betrayal. How could my parents keep this from me? Why did they wait so long? Were they ashamed? Or was there something darker behind their silence? Grandpa Joe gently handed me a worn envelope yellowed with age. Inside were adoption papers with my name on them and a different last name, Bennett. I stared at the name as if it was a foreign language. Then there was a letter, a shaky handwriting that clearly belonged to a woman named Melissa Bennett, my biological mother. The letter was stained with what looked like tears. "To the family who will raise my son, I pray you love him more than I ever could. I'm sorry. Please forgive me." Her words struck me like a punch. Forgiveness, regret, pain. I looked up at Grandpa Joe. "Why didn't my parents ever tell me? Why am I the last to know?" He sighed. "They wanted to protect you. Maybe they thought it would change who you are, or maybe they just didn't know how." For a moment, the kitchen felt suffocating. I couldn't process everything. Part of me wanted to call my mom and dad and scream at them. Another part was scared of what I'd find if I really dug deeper. What if they never wanted to tell me because the truth was painful? I kept thinking about my identity. Who am I really? Is Ethan Walker the real me, or is Ethan Bennett the truth? And where are my real parents? Do they even want to be found? The day that started like any other suddenly became a turning point in my life. I realized that I had a new mission: to find the woman who gave me life and learn why she left me behind. I had no idea where to start. I was overwhelmed by doubts, but fueled by a desperate need for answers. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, thinking about the family I grew up with and the family I might never meet. I wondered if this secret was the reason I sometimes felt like an outsider in my own life. Like there was a puzzle piece missing that I didn't even know I was looking for. The next morning, I told myself, I will find my birth mother. I have to, no matter what it takes, because some truths, no matter how hard, are worth chasing. After Grandpa Joe's bombshell, I felt like my whole world was upside down. I couldn't just pretend everything was normal anymore. But where do you even start when the person you thought was your mom might not be? The next day, I sat at the kitchen table with the adoption papers spread out in front of me. I reread Melissa Bennett's letter over and over, searching for clues. No phone number, no address, nothing that could help me track her down, just those few heartbreaking words. I felt an overwhelming mix of hope and dread. Hope that maybe she was still out there, that maybe she'd want to explain, but dread that maybe I'd find nothing, or worse, that she wouldn't want me. I decided to talk to my parents, Mark and Susan Walker, the next time I saw them. I needed to hear their side of the story to understand why they kept this from me. The conversation was tense, to say the least. I sat in the living room, heart pounding, as Mom and Dad exchanged uneasy glances before sitting down across from me. "Ethan," Mom started, voice shaking, "we thought you were too young to understand. It wasn't an easy secret to keep." "Too young? I'm 21 now. Why wait so long? I blurted out, my voice cracking with frustration. Dad sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. We wanted to protect you. Adoption is complicated. Your birth parents had their reasons, and we didn't want you to feel any less loved. But I'm not less loved, Mom and Dad. I just want to know why they gave me up. Why did they leave me? I asked, fighting back tears. They looked down, silent. It was clear they didn't have answers. Or maybe they were afraid to say. That night, I scoured every social media platform, every online database, searching for any trace of Melissa Bennett or her family. I created a private Facebook group called Finding Melissa and messaged distant relatives, hoping for a lead. The wait was excruciating. Days turned into weeks. Every notification ping made my heart leap, only to sink when it wasn't the news I wanted. I started keeping a journal, writing down my thoughts, frustrations, and the tiny bits of hope that flickered inside me. One evening, while scrolling through a local community forum, I stumbled upon a post about a Melissa Bennett who lived not far from my hometown. It was a charity event flyer, mentioning her name as a volunteer coordinator. My pulse quickened. Could it be her? I showed the flyer to Grandpa Joe, who nodded thoughtfully. Could be the same woman, Ethan. Maybe it's time to reach out. I debated sending a message. What if she rejected me? What if she'd moved on and didn't want to revisit the past? But the need for answers outweighed my fear, so I wrote the message. Hi, Melissa. My name is Ethan Walker. I believe you may be my birth mother. I was adopted as a baby, and I've recently learned about my adoption. I'd like to talk, if you're willing. Thank you. I hit send before I could change my mind. The next 48 hours were a blur of anxiety and anticipation. I barely slept. Every phone ring or notification made me jump. Then finally, a reply came. Ethan, I've been waiting for this day for a long time. I'm scared but willing to talk. Please give me a chance. My heart shattered and healed at the same time. We arranged to meet at a small cafe downtown. A neutral place where we could just be two people searching for lost time. The day of the meeting, my stomach was in knots. I kept rehearsing what to say, how to react. Would she be angry, sad, proud? When she walked in, I almost didn't recognize her. Melissa looked tired, older than her years, but there was something familiar in her eyes. The same spark I saw in myself every morning. We sat down, the air thick with silence. I'm so sorry, Ethan, she began, voice trembling. I was young, scared, and not ready to be a mother. I thought I was doing the right thing, even though it tore me apart. I nodded, tears welling up. Why didn't you try to find me sooner? She looked away, biting her lip. Life took me down a hard path. I was dealing with things I wasn't proud of. I wanted to be strong enough for you, but I wasn't. For the first time, I saw the pain beneath the mystery. We talked for hours about my childhood, her struggles, the family I grew up with, about forgiveness, hope, and the possibility of a future. But there was also anger at the years lost, at the secrets kept, at the silence. As I walked home that evening, my mind raced. I was closer to the truth, but the journey was far from over. Who was I really? A boy abandoned or a son rediscovered? Could I ever truly forgive? Could I build a relationship with someone I barely knew? One thing was certain, my life would never be the same. And just when I thought I could breathe, my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. You don't know the whole story, Ethan. Be careful who you trust. I froze. What secrets were still buried in my past, and who was warning me? After that chilling message, everything got 10 times more complicated. I couldn't stop thinking about who might have sent it. A family member? Someone connected to Melissa? Or worse, someone who wanted to keep the past buried forever. I decided to share what I'd learned with my parents. Mark and Susan were shocked, but also worried. The silence in the room was thick, like we were all walking on eggshells. I think we need a lawyer, Dad finally said, rubbing his temples. This could get messy, especially if other family members start poking around. Turns out, adoption records in our state aren't as sealed as I thought. With a court order, birth parents and adoptees can access more info, but it's a long, stressful legal process. I wasn't ready for that kind of battle yet, but I also knew I couldn't keep living in the dark. Meanwhile, word got out. My closest friends started asking questions after I accidentally mentioned Melissa during a group hangout. The internet doesn't keep secrets for long. Soon enough, a private message thread in one of my online communities exploded with speculation and opinions. Some people were supportive. "You deserve to know the truth." "So brave of you to reach out." Others weren't so kind. "Why dig up the past? Just let it go." Maybe she was better off without her real mom. It stung, but I knew this was part of the price for seeking answers. Then came the awkward family dinners. Relatives I hadn't seen in years suddenly called, wanting updates. Some tried to offer help, others just wanted to gossip. It felt like I was a walking headline. My relationship with my parents became strained. Mom started avoiding eye contact, Dad grew quieter. The questions I asked seemed to reopen wounds no one was ready to face. One night, after a particularly tense dinner, I found a folder tucked away in my parents' bedroom drawer. It was filled with old letters and photographs, evidence of the past I never knew existed. There was a letter from Melissa to my parents, written just months after I was born. She talked about her struggles, how hard it was to give me up, but how she hoped I'd be loved. But alongside the letters were documents suggesting disputes over custody and some legal threats. My heart sank. Why hadn't my parents told me about this battle? Were they hiding more than just my adoption? As the days passed, I grew more isolated, torn between anger, confusion, and a desperate need to understand. One evening, while scrolling through Facebook, I received a friend request from someone named Rachel Parker. The profile picture looked familiar, a woman who resembled Melissa. I accepted immediately. Rachel messaged me, "Ethan, I'm Melissa's sister. I know about your search. There's a lot you don't know, and it's better if we talk." A part of me hesitated. Was this a trap or an opportunity? I agreed to a phone call. Her voice was soft but urgent. "Melissa never wanted you to be in pain, Ethan, but your birth family, well, they had their reasons for keeping things secret. It's complicated." I pressed for details, but Rachel was vague, hinting at family scandals and dark secrets best left alone. "Please be careful," she warned. "Not everyone wants the truth to come out." After hanging up, I realized I was standing at a crossroads. Should I keep digging, risking more heartbreak? Or let sleeping dogs lie and try to build a new life from what I know? I didn't have the answers, but one thing was clear: this story was far from over. And just when I thought the worst was behind me, a knock came at the door. Standing there was a man I'd never seen before, holding a worn leather folder. He introduced himself as a private investigator hired by Melissa. "I have information you need, Ethan," he said. My pulse raced. Was this the breakthrough I'd been waiting for, or another chapter of secrets waiting to unravel? The man at the door, the private investigator, introduced himself as Jack Collins. His eyes were sharp, his demeanor calm but serious. He didn't waste time with small talk. "Melissa hired me a few months ago," he said. "She wanted to make sure you knew the truth. There are things your family didn't tell you." I invited him in, heart pounding. The weight of everything felt heavier with each passing moment. Jack pulled out the worn leather folder and spread out a stack of documents on my kitchen table. Birth certificates, adoption papers, photos, even some personal letters. As I flipped through them, a narrative started to emerge. Melissa had been a teenager struggling with a toxic home life, an alcoholic mother, a father who wasn't around, constant fights, and no support system. She'd gotten pregnant at 16, and it was devastating, but the letters she wrote were full of love and hope. She didn't want to give me up, but she believed she couldn't provide a safe, stable home. What shocked me most was the evidence of a custody battle that never reached me. Legal documents showing my adoptive parents fought to keep me, while Melissa's family wanted me back. Why? Because Melissa's family wasn't the loving group I'd imagined. The papers revealed that her relatives were manipulative and dangerous. Rumors of drug use, threats, and manipulation. That side of the family had pressured Melissa into giving me up for my own good. It felt like a betrayal from every angle. Jack then handed me a photo album filled with pictures of Melissa and me as a baby, moments I'd never known existed. Tears welled up. For the first time, I felt connected to this mysterious woman who had given me life but was forced to stay distant. But Jack's visit wasn't over. "There's more," he said, his voice lowering. "I found out your adoptive parents kept certain details from you. They've been protecting you but also hiding things." He told me about conversations he'd overheard during his investigation, about medical histories withheld, about reasons for the adoption that were never shared. It was overwhelming. I'd spent so long feeling betrayed by my birth family, but now I was questioning my adoptive parents too. The walls I'd built around myself started to crumble. Days later, I confronted my parents. Mom broke down crying, Dad was quiet, but there was a hint of relief in his eyes. "I wanted to tell you, Ethan," Mom said, voice shaky, "but we didn't know how. It was complicated. We wanted to protect you." I wanted to scream, to demand answers, but I also understood their fear. Between the truths and the lies, I was caught in a storm. At school, the whispers followed me. Some students knew, others guessed. The shame was suffocating. I found refuge in my closest friend Jake, who listened without judgment and encouraged me to keep going, to find the full truth. One evening, Jack called again. "There's a meeting," he said, "with Melissa's family and yours. They want to talk." I didn't know if I was ready. Could I face the people who gave me up? Who kept secrets? Who judged me without knowing me? But I also knew this was the moment to face the past head-on or let it consume me forever. As I prepared, I looked at my reflection in the mirror, a young man torn between two worlds, searching for identity, for answers, for peace. And then the doorbell rang. Standing there was Melissa. I still remember that day like it was yesterday, the day when everything I thought I knew about my life, my family, and myself was about to be challenged in the harshest way possible. Melissa arrived at the door looking nervous but determined. Her eyes met mine with a strange mixture of regret, hope, and something I couldn't quite place. She wasn't the stranger I'd imagined all these years. She was a person with her own pain, mistakes, and stories. The weight of years apart hung thick between us. The meeting was set at a small, neutral cafe. Nothing fancy, just a quiet place where we could speak without interruptions. My adoptive parents sat across the table, faces pale but resolute. Melissa came with her sister, Angela, who was protective and sharp-tongued. From the moment we sat down, the air was heavy with unspoken emotions. Melissa broke the silence first. "I know I wasn't there when you needed me, Ethan," she said, her voice trembling. "I made mistakes, but I've never stopped thinking about you. I wanted to ask everything. Why? Why did she give me up so easily? Why didn't she fight harder?" But the words stuck in my throat. Angela wasn't so forgiving. "You think you can just show up after all these years? Do you even understand what you put us all through? Mom was broken, Dad disappeared, all because of you and that stupid pregnancy." Her words cut like knives. I looked at Melissa, desperate for answers. "I was scared," she admitted. "I was 15, pregnant, and alone. My family, they didn't want me. They said I'd ruin everything. I had nowhere to go." My adoptive mom reached out, her hand trembling. "We took you in because we loved you, Ethan. We tried to give you the life you deserved." The conversation spiraled between accusations, apologies, and painful truths. It was raw and messy, the kind of confrontation no one wants but everyone needs. At one point, I asked Melissa about the decision to give me up. She sighed deeply. "It wasn't just me. They pressured me. Said you'd have a better life with your adoptive parents. They made me feel like I was doing the right thing. But every day since, I've wondered if I felt a strange mix of anger and sympathy. How could I hold a grudge when she was just a scared kid caught in a cruel situation? Still, the pain of abandonment lingered. Why didn't you tell me sooner? Why keep this secret all my life?" Melissa looked away, tears brimming. "I wanted to protect you from shame, from confusion. I was ashamed myself." The hours passed with back and forth stories, memories of the pregnancy, the adoption process, the fights, the tears. Each revelation peeled back layers I hadn't known existed. My adoptive parents told stories of sleepless nights, worries about whether I'd ever find out, and the guilt they carried for hiding the truth. Angela was harder to break through. You don't get to erase the past, Ethan. You don't get a do-over. But somewhere in that cafe, a fragile understanding began to form. We weren't perfect, none of us. We were broken, scared, human. After the meeting, I walked outside into the cold air, heart pounding. The weight of years lifted a little, but the road ahead was still long and uncertain. Could I forgive? Could I accept this complicated family that had shaped me in ways I never understood? One thing was clear. The past was no longer a mystery. And that truth was both terrifying and strangely freeing. But just as I thought I could breathe again, my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. It read, "You're not ready for what's next." That text message shook me more than I expected. You're not ready for what's next? Who would say something like that? What could be worse than everything I just uncovered? I tried to shake it off, telling myself it was just a prank, maybe some random stranger messing with me. But deep down, I felt the old knot of anxiety tightening in my chest. The days that followed were a blur of sleepless nights and restless thoughts. I kept replaying the cafe meeting in my mind, the voices, the emotions, the truths that had finally surfaced. I wondered if I was ready to face more. Then, out of nowhere, I got a call from a private investigator named Mark, someone my adoptive parents had hired years ago to dig into my biological family's history. "I have some new information," Mark said, his voice low and cautious. "You might want to sit down for this." Sitting down wasn't easy. Mark told me things I wasn't prepared to hear. First, that my biological mother, Melissa, had been pressured not just by her family, but by a man. The man she claimed was my biological father. He was no saint. Mark's files showed a history of manipulation and violence, the kind that leaves scars invisible to the eye. Melissa had fled from him, hiding the pregnancy as long as she could. The family's refusal to support her wasn't just cold indifference, it was fear. Second, Mark uncovered documents suggesting my adoption wasn't as straightforward as I'd thought. There were signatures I didn't recognize, legal ambiguities, and some irregularities in the paperwork. "Someone didn't want you to find out," Mark said quietly. The pieces didn't fit neatly, and that terrified me. I'd always imagined adoption as a neat chapter, closed and forgotten, but instead, it felt like a messy novel, filled with missing pages and hidden footnotes. I shared the news with my adoptive parents. They were as stunned as I was. "My God," my mom whispered, holding my hand. "Why didn't anyone tell us this?" My dad just shook his head in silence. The burden of truth felt heavier than ever. I wanted to scream at the world, why all the secrets, why the lies, what else was hidden from me? Trying to keep some semblance of normalcy, I went back to college, but it was impossible to focus. Everywhere I looked, I saw questions I couldn't answer. I started digging myself, poring over public records, calling old contacts, following leads. One name kept popping up, Richard, the man Mark suspected was my biological father. Rumors said he was dangerous, unpredictable, and then came the phone call that changed everything. A voice distorted and cold. "Stop looking, Ethan. Some truths are better buried." I hung up, heart pounding, hands shaking. Fear wasn't just a feeling anymore, it was a presence, stalking me in shadows. I debated telling Melissa, but the last conversation still fresh in my mind, her tears, her regret, made me hesitate. Instead, I confided in my best friend, Jake. "You're in deep, man," Jake said, concern etched on his face. "Be careful. This isn't just family drama anymore, it's something bigger." The days blurred into a tense standoff between what I knew, what I feared, and what I needed to find out. And then, one night, the power went out. I sat alone in darkness, my phone buzzing again. This time, a text, "Stop or you'll regret it." The silence in the room was deafening. I realized I was caught in a web much larger than just an adoption story. The past wasn't just a secret anymore, it was a trap, but I wasn't ready to give up, because if I didn't find the answers, who would? And as the storm raged outside, I knew my life had changed forever. The night after that chilling text, I couldn't sleep. Every shadow in my apartment seemed to twist and stretch, turning into something sinister. I kept checking my phone, half expecting another warning, but it stayed silent. The next morning, I realized that fear was no longer just an emotion. It had become a cage. I needed to break free. I called Melissa. Her voice trembled when she answered. "Ethan, is everything okay?" I hesitated, then decided to lay it all out. The threats, the secrets, the impossible past. She sighed deeply. "You're stronger than you think, but you need to be careful," she told me more. Things she'd kept buried for years, how she escaped Richard's grip only to be silenced by her own family. How the adoption was a desperate attempt to save me from a life of pain. "And now, Ethan," she whispered, "those shadows are reaching out again." I felt my resolve harden. I couldn't let fear dictate my life anymore. That weekend, I flew to the city where Melissa lived, a modest town 3 hours away. We met at a small cafe, a place she trusted. Seeing her face lined with years of pain and resilience stirred something inside me. We talked for hours. She handed me old letters, faded photographs, and a diary filled with cryptic entries. One letter caught my eye, from Richard, full of threats and twisted apologies. Melissa's hands shook as she explained. He wanted control, over me, over you. As I flipped through the diary, one entry stood out. If Ethan ever finds out the truth, they will come for him. The family, the secrets, the lies, it's all connected. The pieces began to fit. This wasn't just about a lost child, it was about a family entrenched in shadows and silence. Determined to uncover more, I reached out to the private investigator Mark again. He met me in a dimly lit bar, sliding a folder across the table. "This," he said, "is what they don't want you to see." Inside were photographs, legal documents, and notes linking Richard to a local crime syndicate. Suddenly, this was no longer just a personal quest. It was dangerous. I realized I was not just searching for my parents. I was unraveling a web that could destroy lives. Returning home, I found my phone buzzing nonstop. Texts, calls from unknown numbers. I blocked them all, but the feeling of being watched lingered. One evening, as I stepped outside to clear my head, a black car idled nearby. The windows were tinted, but I could feel eyes on me. My heart raced. I wasn't just chasing my past, I was being chased by it, but I couldn't stop. For my own sanity, for the truth, for the life I deserved. I told Jake everything, the threats, the danger, the discoveries. He looked at me with a mix of admiration and concern. "You're in way over your head, man, but I'm with you." Together, we planned the next move. It was time to confront Richard, to bring his secrets into the light. But as we prepared, I couldn't shake one terrifying thought. What if the people who gave me a home all those years ago were protecting me from a darkness I was only beginning to understand? And what if the truth I sought wasn't freedom, but a curse? We planned for weeks, meticulously, cautiously. Every call encrypted, every meeting in public, crowded places. The shadows that haunted my life had grown into looming giants, but I refused to let them win. The day we finally confronted Richard, the sky was heavy with gray clouds, as if nature itself knew the storm we were about to unleash. I still remember the cold sweat dripping down my back as we stepped into the nondescript warehouse on the outskirts of town. His hideout, or so Mark had said. The place reeked of damp concrete and secrets. Richard was there, exactly as Melissa described, sharp eyes cold as ice, a smile that barely hid contempt. "You've come a long way, Ethan," he sneered. "Curious boy wanting to dig up skeletons." I swallowed my fear and stepped forward. "Why did you give me up? Why did you let me go?" He laughed, a harsh, broken sound. "You think I had a choice? Your mother, she was never one to play by the rules. When she got pregnant at 15, she made a decision. For you, for herself, for everyone involved. Adoption was the only way to keep you safe. But safe from what? I asked. Why all the lies? Richard's smile faltered for the first time. Because the world isn't kind. Our family, well, we're tangled in things you wouldn't understand. There were threats, debts, enemies. You being out of the picture was a necessary evil. I wanted to scream, to punch him, but all I could do was listen. Melissa stood behind me, gripping my arm, her eyes fierce. You're lying, I said. You wanted to control everything, including me. You threatened my mom. You tried to silence her. Richard's expression twisted into rage. Enough! You're nothing but a pawn. The confrontation escalated quickly. Words thrown like knives, accusations, threats. But then, the unexpected happened. Mark's phone buzzed loudly. The room fell silent. It's the cops, Mark whispered. They're here. Turns out, Mark had been working with the authorities all along, gathering evidence on Richard's illegal activities. Richard was arrested on the spot. As he was led away in cuffs, I felt a wave of relief wash over me. But it was complicated. The man who gave me up was flawed, damaged, but also my father. Melissa held me as tears streamed down my face. You're free now, Ethan. Yet freedom tasted bitter. In the weeks that followed, I struggled to reconcile the fragments of my past. My adoptive parents had sheltered me from this darkness, but at the cost of secrecy and silence. My birth parents were complicated, wrapped in shadows, but still part of me. I sought therapy, journaled every painful thought, and slowly started to rebuild my identity. Jake was my rock throughout, never judging, always supportive. But the biggest challenge was telling my adoptive parents the truth. Mom and Dad sat silently, tears in their eyes. We never wanted to hurt you, Mom whispered. We wanted to protect you. I forgave them, not because I had to, but because I wanted to. The adoption had been an act of love in a world that gave none. Yet I also realized that some scars don't fade. The question of why my birth parents abandoned me remained unanswered. But maybe some truths are not for uncovering, or perhaps they'll reveal themselves in time. For now, I'm choosing to live with the pieces I have. Pieces of love, pain, betrayal, and hope, and that's enough. Months later, I visited the quiet graveyard where my grandfather was buried. Standing by his tombstone, I whispered, thank you for telling me the truth. Thank you for giving me the chance to find myself. The path ahead is uncertain, filled with both light and shadows. But for the first time in my life, I'm walking it on my own terms. If you ever find yourself caught between worlds, the family you were born into and the one that raised you, remember this. Identity isn't about blood alone. It's about the courage to face your past and the strength to create your own future.